Welcome back, America. Our next guest is someone who has been looking to make our elections more secure and easier to vote by simplifying some of the complexities of voting. He is Jason Snead, who serves as the executive director of the Honest Elections Project, and he joins us to talk about his work and the importance of transparent elections right now. Jason, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here.
It is an amazing time. For so long in our history, voting was pretty simple. You went to the ballot or went to the booth on election day. You cast your paper ballot. Things got counted at night. We know who the election winner was the next morning. Today, we have weeks of election before and after, and there's all these complexities now. Ranked choice has made it even more difficult. Give us just a top line of how diversified and complex our voting system has become.
Well, you've got a series of policy choices that states have made over the last 15 or 20 years that have resulted in making voting in many cases more difficult, but also delays in results, right? The decision to allow more and more people to vote by mail, then the decision, especially recently and in blue states, to allow those mail ballots to come in longer and longer after Election Day. These are decisions that make it harder to tabulate results quickly. And now we have this national push for ranked choice voting, which only adds additional complexity both for the voter and for the officials that have to tabulate results. In fact, if you have a law in your state that says you can vote by mail and you can send your mail ballot in up to 2 weeks after Election Day, with RCV, you can't even start tabulating until 2 weeks after the election, because every single ballot can lead to changes in the way that candidates are selected or eliminated and can actually change the outcome of entire elections. So if we want prompt and accurate results, I think that we need to be making some policy choices that get us closer to having ballots in on Election Day, prompt and accurate tabulation, and of course, rejecting ranked choice voting.
Yeah, so let's walk through ranked choice voting. First off, one of the few early states to adopt it is a Republican state, Alaska. I think there's some heartburn there, as we heard from Sarah Palin and others. Tell us a little bit about ranked choice, where its history came from, why some red states went with it, and the real danger long-term to election integrity.
So, ranked choice voting is an idea that has been pushed for some time from the left, and it's gaining traction in localities and municipalities all across the country and in a couple of states. The fundamental idea is that instead of voting for a single person in a race and moving on, now you are given the chance to rank multiple candidates, up to 5 in a final 5 system for each and every race. And then through a series of elimination rounds, you use algorithms to compute election winners. Ranked choice voting proponents say that this will lead to a more representative and responsive government, but what it actually seems to do is just make voting harder and make the tabulation and the process of choosing winners more difficult to understand and opaque to the average voter. Now, it is being pushed, and there is a multi-million-dollar national campaign funded by some of the left's deepest pockets to bring this to states all across the country. And as I'm sure that your viewers have heard about Alaska, for instance, it's often sold as part of a broader set of reforms. So Alaskans thought they were voting to get rid of dark money. And then ranked choice voting was essentially the dark horse in that ballot measure. And so they woke up and found out that they had upended their entire election system. Ironically enough, in a way which it seems is designed to actually give more influence to the deepest dark money donors on the left, who are spending tens of millions of dollars to quite literally buy themselves an entirely new election system that gives them greater power and influence over the political process.
The question voters always have, all right, if liberals are pushing it, what is their advantage? What advantage do they see for Democrats? I guess California tells us something about it, but give us a little sense of why liberals got excited about this. Why abandon a system that's worked for 246 years perfectly in America?
Well, this is not the first time that the left has thrown out a perfectly good system because it hasn't delivered outcomes that they like. But I think that the calculus is this. With ranked choice voting, you also see proponents of RCV pushing to get rid of the party primary system. So the idea is that everyone runs in a California-style jungle primary, and then the top 5 vote getters advance to a general election where you use ranked choice voting to compute the results. I believe that the calculus there is that if you get rid of party primaries, you weaken our political parties, and political parties are not especially popular right now. So this is something that actually has a lot of appeal. But nature abhors a vacuum. And if you create a power vacuum, something has to fill it.
That's
And what
right.
we have seen over the last few years is that the left has developed the largest dark money networks in the country. Arabella Advisors Network, for instance, routinely brings in billions of dollars to fund left wing causes. So if you're getting rid of the power that is once held by a political party, something has to replace that. I think they're betting that these outside and independent expenditure groups funded by folks like George Soros are ready and willing and waiting in the wings to fill that void. So I think that their calculus is you change the dynamic of elections, push our politics to the center left, make it harder for conservatives to get elected without that party primary. And then, of course, you displace the parties themselves, allowing these dark money groups to step in and have even more influence over our politics. So, as I said before, this is quite literally left wing elites buying a new election system that is more responsive to them, to their politics, and to their agenda.
Absolutely remarkable. Beyond Soros and Arabella, what are some of the other groups that are beginning to spend money? Because it is a huge amount of money to push this agenda right now.
Well, the largest group that is pushing ranked choice voting nationwide is an organization called Fair Vote, and they take money from just about every major left wing donor. They are running around the country right now, and they are pushing legislatures to bring ranked choice voting into localities. This is always the first step. It's the way that they get their foot in the door, and this is why it's so important for legislatures to be aware that there is no such thing as giving an inch; they will take a mile. But we have seen the problems with ranked choice voting even in local races. I live in Northern Virginia, just outside Washington, D.C.
Right.
Arlington just used it about a week ago in a Democratic primary, which, given the basic one party status, is essentially the election. And it took days before they could even begin tabulating. And it was very confusing. In fact, so confusing that some of the nation's leading election law experts can't even understand the math behind the system. We don't want to be bringing this to localities, but groups like Fair Vote are pushing this through the legislatures. They're lobbying aggressively to get it done. And when legislatures say no, they then go to the ballot with often deceptively worded or misleading ballot measures. Idaho, for instance, just banned ranked choice voting, and within days, outside money started pouring into the state. And now they are getting ready to gather signatures on a ballot measure to bring that California style jungle primary and Final Four voting to Idaho. So this is something that we're seeing all across the country. It is a long-term strategy to change the way that elections are run for partisan gain.
And there seems to be a large number of news organizations that are cheerleading for this. Tell us a little bit about the news media's coverage. I saw some stories recently that said, hey, ranked choice is going to be good for Republicans. I haven't found a Republican who thinks that. Tell us what the news media has been doing here.
Well, I have to say that if someone can show me why George Soros would be spending millions of dollars to promote a system that helps Republicans get elected, please do. I have yet to actually discover that. Yeah, you see, what you actually see is a phenomenon where you've got folks that we've talked about, rent-a Republicans and so forth, paid lobbyists that are happily taking money from the left to push this idea. And of course, there are people who genuinely believe that ranked choice voting will help conservatives. But having looked at this, having seen where the money is coming from, having seen the organizations that are pushing this, and how carefully they are trying to avoid being branded as left wing, even though they are, I'm
Yeah.
fairly well convinced that this is another one of a series of things that the left is doing to try to change elections for political gain. And it's important to note that the same people that are funding ranked choice voting are also funding Mark Elias and his constant, nonstop push to abuse the courts to rewrite our voting laws for political advantage. It's the same people that are pushing the Zuckbucks 2.0 program through the Center for Tech and Civic Life to infiltrate election offices and push left-wing politics directly into the administration of elections. And now they're pushing ranked choice voting and trying to convince us that this isn't just another attempt to upend the election system and skew the playing field for the left's advantage. So I don't buy it, and I don't think that people should either when they're being sold on ranked choice voting. We need to keep voting simple for the average voter, not make it harder, especially for vulnerable voters, to cast their ballots.
Jason, I want to ask about, we got about a minute left, the possibility of legal challenges to ranked choice voting. It seems to me that once some states do this, there's an unequal voting system. All people don't have the right to vote the same way. Will there be, or has there been, any legal theory developed about potentially attacking this in the courts?
Well, there have been legal challenges. So far, they have not gone very far. I fully expect, of course, if more states adopt ranked choice voting, there will be additional legal challenges. And there are some interesting theories. I mean, it is undeniable that when you use ranked choice voting, the ballots of minority voters are more likely to be exhausted and eliminated. The legal term for that is a disparate impact against
Right.
minority voters. That's something that hasn't yet been fully explored in the courts. And there are certainly other vulnerabilities. But even outside of the legal issues alone, there are practical issues related to running and conducting and tabulating a ranked choice election. By relying on opaque algorithms and computers, it becomes very difficult to hand recount close races. And there will be legal challenges when you have a close race, and we don't yet have the rules or the system that answers the basic questions of what constitutes a close race and how do you resolve those sorts of issues. And then, of course, there are the problems from the voter's perspective. It's one thing to imagine ranking 5 candidates in one race. Now imagine if you have to rank 5 candidates in 20 races. And so you don't get just a ballot, you get a scroll that you have to unfurl. Then imagine doing that sitting bedside in a nursing home next to an elderly parent or grandparent. It's a nightmare no matter how you look at it. And whether it's tossed out in the courts or tossed out by voters at the ballot box, I think that we should be looking very seriously at every possible way to stop this unwise push for ranked choice voting.
It should be easy and safe to vote in. Right now, there's one side that seems to be trying to defeat both of those. Jason Snead, what a great honor to have you on. Your group is doing such great work. What's a quick way for them to stay in touch with you?
Check us out, honestelections.org, or the Conservative Coalition Pushing Back Against Ranked Choice Voting, stoprcv.com.
All right, folks, those are two good set websites. Jason, thanks for your time today, folks. We hit a commercial break here. We'll be right back after these messages to talk a little bit more about this very important issue.